All the roads are winding.
Welcome to the show, Venessa. I'm very excited to talk today, and I can already feel so much energy and so many guides and helpers and everything. Like, there's just so much going on in the energetic realm right now connecting with you. So I'm very excited to welcome all those beings to connect and also to just hear from you and get to hang out in your magic and in your medicine and go there. So thank you for being our guest.
I am so thrilled that I'm here with you, Natalie. I've been a fan of your podcasts for a long time. And it's just really, as a podcaster, I hear this also where people are like, I feel like I know you. I feel like we're friends.
Yeah.
And so I'm kind of feeling that right now. And I'm just super honored to be here.
We're totally I feel like I've already known you. I feel like we've been like hanging out forever,
Yeah.
So I feel it. I feel that. And I'm excited, as a fellow to have a fellow podcaster on. So people will definitely direct people to go check out your show because I know they're going to love it. So before we get into all that, would you like to lead us on an invocation?
Absolutely. Yeah, let's do it. I need this right now too. So I just invite everybody now to get fully present into this moment. We're going to really drop in. And if you are able and it feels good to do so, I invite you to close your eyes and start to become present with the sounds that surround you. And begin to cultivate a nice, easy, rhythmic breath, taking a nice deep inhale, expanding all corners of your lungs, your belly, your abdomen. And when you reach that very tippy top of that expansion, gently roll that into an exhale. And with that exhale, just surrendering into the release. And then gently roll that back into an inhale. So creating that wave-like motion with your breath, like the wave of an ocean. And with your next breath, let us imagine we have these little tiny plant roots that begin to grow from the bottoms of our feet. And these plant roots want to go toward the floor. So going through any floor and ground below you, any floors below that, breaking through concrete or dirt, compost, bedrock, making their way through all the different layers of the earth and toward the center of Mama Earth. And imagine that center core energy as this molten, fiery, nourishing, loving energy. And taking those plant roots and plugging directly into the belly of Mama Earth. And when you do, taking a nice deep breath in and sucking it up like a straw, her energy up through all the different layers of the earth, through the bedrock, through the soil, through the floor, and into your feet, your legs, your knees, your thighs, your hips, your pelvic bowl, moving up your belly and your spine and up into your heart, and taking a nice deep breath there, allowing her warmth, love, and energy to circulate throughout your body, feeling that warmth and that love. And imagining that energy coming up your chest, your shoulders, your neck, your jaw, your teeth, your nose, your eye sockets, bathing your brain, reaching the very tippy top crown chakra of your head. And now imagine above your head a portal that begins to open up. And as it does, this beautiful healing Akashic light from above coming down, raining down upon you, like the most luxurious shower you've ever taken. And also allowing that light to enter through the top of your head and anchoring in at your heart space. And taking another nice, deep cleansing breath here. Allowing that light to wash away anything that is heavy or stuck or dense in your energy body or inside of you. allowing that to wash away to Mother Earth, where she's there waiting like a sponge or a vacuum, sucking it up for you to compost it. And with this connection above and below, always rooted and wild, connected in at your heart space, place your hand, if you are able, on your heart now. And bow to yourself in this moment, anchoring in to your intention that you have today. And taking a last breath to breathe love and grace into the heart space. And exhaling that intention out into the world today. And when you are ready, you can slowly open your eyes.
Lovely. I saw so much just like sparkling pink and purple light energy. Yeah. Um, cool. Thanks for that. So now that we are wildly rooted, which little teaser there for everybody, see if they pick up on that. Why don't you tell us about your ancestors and what are your lineages? Where do you come from?
Yeah. Man, this is something that I've been really curious about for my whole life, but I guess in a really conscious way where I began to research that didn't really happen until my adulthood. But my family's originally from Puerto Rico, or Borinquen, if you're looking at the language natively of the Taino people. And as many folks from the Caribbean, so my grandparents immigrated to the US in the 50s and 60s and ended up in Chicago, so-called Chicago, land of Potawatomi and Peoria. And that's where I was born. But you know, as many Caribbean folks and Latino folks, Latinx folks in general, our backgrounds are very mixed, right? So especially in the Caribbean, we have the native populations. And so in Puerto Rico and Cuba and those areas, it was the Taino people. And of course, there's probably a lot more mixed with other people of other native traditions. And then you have the European, Iberian population coming in, so primarily Spain. And then you have the African populations, of course, coming in as enslaved people. And so it's been an interesting journey, really looking at these different elements, you know, either scientifically, like with actual DNA, or just stories from my grandparents and my parents. And really coming out of it with this understanding of just how complicated it is to be of, I mean, any kind of, you know, mixed lineage, but there's so much, I think, internal struggle that a lot of people experience, especially in the Latinx community in the Caribbean, around like colorism and racism, and yet like we're all everything. And we're all of it. And here I speak from a place of a woman of color with light skin privilege, and having full understanding of that, among other privileges. So it's been a very interesting journey with ancestral healing work and just kind of connecting in with forgiveness within myself in a lot of very deep ways that I didn't realize I carried until I started to do this work.
Wow, almost sounds like factions of your inner self were kind of like judging each other and you had to bring them, integrate.
Yeah, because I feel like so much, I realize now as a kid, I was receiving a lot verbally, but also just as, you know, through osmosis from my grandparents who held a lot of contradictory feelings and racism and colorism. And as a kid, really feeling how wrong that was and confused, and but you're still receiving it, right? And so, yeah, it's been really interesting to touch in on those levels.
Yeah. Wow. And that, my friends, is ancestral healing.
Yeah, right.
Right?
Like, holy shit, there's a lot of layers here.
Right? That's
Uh-huh.
amazing, though. I love how you articulated that into the different factions, and I bet so many listeners can really resonate with that for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. And where do you live now, and who are the original people of that land?
Yes. So now, as of 3.5 years ago, I moved to Southern Oregon in what's known as the Applegate region. And it's the people of the Takelma people who are here among many others, but where I am specifically, that's where I landed. It's this super tiny quote town. It's not even technically a town that is full of beautiful forest and creeks and wild rivers and mountains, and it's so beautiful and such a different environment than Chicago, where I'm from.
Yeah.
I was born and raised inner city Chicago, and so I always had this connection to nature and really wanting to be more immersed, but I didn't get to make that happen until my mid-30s, which I'm
Yeah.
so grateful for now.
Wow. What took you to Williams? I mean, that's such a huge jump from Chicago.
Yeah. Well, I always wanted to move coast-wise. So either West Coast, I really thought California. I had a lot of friends who went to California and in college and such, or even to Puerto Rico, where I still have family and, beach island life, which sounds romantic, but we know there's a lot of stuff, challenging stuff going on in Puerto Rico. And so I knew that I wanted to move. I knew that it had to be immersed in nature much more than where I was. And the universe gave me an invitation to step in when my partner got a job in Southern Oregon. And I hadn't actually thought about Oregon at all. Like, I didn't, other than Portland, I think that most people who aren't familiar with Pacific Northwest, just in general, that's what they think of. So I was really ignorant. And I was like, man, Southern Oregon, I had no concept. And I came to visit him when he first got here, and I fell in love. And I was like, okay, yeah, this is it. We're coming here. And yeah, so that was about 3.5 years ago.
Wow. And even though it's a little town, how's the culture there? Like, do you have cool people to connect with, or what's going on?
Yeah, who knew? It's just like a total hub for herbalism and holistic healing. Yeah. Like Herb Farm is here.
Oh, wow.
There's a lot of really big farms in general, but also like herbalism and the movement here. So the town that I'm in has a lot of there's a lot of culture, lots of people from all over the world, but it was really started by, I guess, hippies that came over that really wanted to have an intentional community and sort of like back to landers. That's my understanding. Although I don't want to just take a broad brush stroke over everybody else who's been here. But that's like sort of the hood that I'm in right now. And so lots of beautiful organic farms. So my partner, just for background, is an organic farmer. And so that's basically why we came here, was because he found a farm management job. And so, yeah, of course there's farms, but I had no idea. And then one of the larger towns, Ashland, is also a hub for, holistic healing and sort of like energy work and all that good stuff and witchy stuff that I was very much into in Chicago. And then it was kind of like, oh, I just landed here and I don't, I could still go to a psychic and get a colonic.
All in the same day. Or get a psychic colonic.
Totally. Yeah.
Cool. So, I love that. I love how you just landed exactly in a place that would feed your wild and that would, just gave you so much beauty and just sounds amazing. Sounds amazing. I've only driven through like the Ashland area, but it was gorgeous. It was
Yeah.
something.
Beautiful.
Yeah. Wow. So there's so much I'm so excited to get into with you today, especially around nutrition and Akashic Records and all these, how do nutrition and spirit and earth all intersect? So is there a place in your own journey where it became apparent for you that nutrition was important? Like how did that become your thing?
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I guess I always loved food. Like I'm a sun Cancer and nourishment is my jam. Like I just really love, all those things, and being raised with a lot of home cooking, although there was also a lot of standard American diet woven into. And my grandmother's always really emphasizing home cooked meals, food is medicine. Like literally they would say, comida es medicina, food is medicine. And so that would be my first connection into that concept of, like we heal with food and food is nourishment on like a deep level. And so, and also with like culinary herbs, so a little bit of herbalism. And both of my grandmothers were super big plant ladies. They brought carried seeds over. I don't think they were supposed to from Puerto Rico, but they did it anyway, thank goodness. And little rebel witches. And so they had their garden with all of these plants that are native to Puerto Rico that they were able to grow.
I can't imagine how those plants, I guess Chicago's got hot summers, but they were probably like, winter,
A lot of moving in and out of the plants. So they had most of them in planters, like the ones that, were finicky. So during the winter, both of them would just stockpile all the plants in their basement and have like the plant lamps, and that was the gig for winter time. And but both of them had such beautiful plants, and we had our basics, which actually are, a lot of these are available everywhere outside of Puerto Rico too, widely available, but like chamomile, spearmint, and mints, all these different kinds of mints, oregano. And there's a particular type of oregano in Puerto Rico called, my grandmother's called it oregano brujo. And so it's like this really fat, thick leaf type of oregano. And it's one of my earliest connections to smelling a plant and like really having that stay in your consciousness, like you met that plant. And so that's where it began, like the seeds were planted. And then I became a teenager and didn't give a shit anymore and like ate what I wanted. And so I got off that train. And then in college, I started getting interested in veganism. Like, all these people are vegan. What's that about? And so I started dabbling in that. And then my junior year of college, my mom got sick with breast cancer. And that was the catalyst for basically everything that I do today. My life really shifting. Me going into researcher mode and trying to find anything and everything that I could to help support my mom. And also all the while fighting the conventional medical system that she was in, and going through the checklist and the doctor saying that you can eat whatever you want, food doesn't matter, and not having, this was also, how many years ago? This was like 15, 16, 17 years ago. So it was a little bit different than today. I think that hopefully it continues like this. But when I work with clients and work with their doctors, they're just much more open than they were even like 5 years ago, I would say. But anyway, so this was over a decade ago. And so I was like, no, but this is not right. I'm reading all about this. Google, I think maybe Google just started. And so like, it wasn't as good. There wasn't as many bloggers out there. Like it just wasn't a thing, right? Like,
right. It was like Alta Vista and stuff like, yeah. Right.
Yeah. And so I remember going into these random forums or chat rooms of like people who are like outsiders and fringe and like touting the healing powers of food and all of these other alternative modalities. I mean, like literally everything that I still use today. And now people are like, in the mainstream are starting to talk about it. It's like, that was in that forum that like forum 15 years ago.
Yeah, Internet 2.0. Like, yeah. Oh my gosh, I remember those chat rooms and forums. I talked a lot about design. So yeah, keep going. Tell us more.
Yeah. So, this is why I heard of, actually, I first heard of Ayurveda there. So that was interesting because it's one of those things where, how when you hear things, but they're not quite matching your frequency or like vibration of your consciousness. So it's kind of like, okay, my energy and my consciousness bookmarked it. We're just going to put that away for later and then revisit when we can really have a better understanding. And so I feel like a lot of things that I encountered or discovered, it was like that because it was so new. But yeah, so that's where I really dove into nutrition, particularly related to cancer work and looking to see what might support my mom. And it wasn't until I started to really implement a lot of the changes and things, experimenting with my own body, with the diets that I was reading about, but also a lot of the different healing modalities and detox, for example. So this was the first time that I was really interested in looking at what does detox, what does that mean, all these different kinds of detoxes. And so self-experimentation was a huge part of my life and learning, just even now as a practitioner and still doing that. But seeing the changes, like incredible changes in my health because of these shifts in my diet and my lifestyle. And I'm seeing this with my other family members who are also participating a little bit more. And, they were kind of slowly getting on board with cleaning the pantry and all that kind of stuff. My mom was probably the one that was the hardest to budge, ironically.
Wow.
Yeah. Wow. But I think it was encouraging for her to see a lot of the shifts in me. So for quick background, for years, I had chronic acid reflux, asthma, acne, skin issues, which that is something that I still, even as an adult, like, there's spiralic healing journey with all this. Insomnia, it was a total inflammation. I was very swollen as a kid. I was very active. I was a performer and dancer, but I didn't eat super well. And so there was all of these different issues that I've experienced. And most of them went away within like the first 3 months of me shifting things,
And just for people listening, like Venessa is like a glowing goddess. I mean, it's amazing. Yeah. So
sweet.
Yeah.
That was like, I felt the best I ever had in my entire life, even like the memories that I had as a kid, because I still experienced things as a child. And so I feel like I was very lucky in that I still had a lot of energy. Now I see so many kids, although they're also experiencing a lot more toxins than I feel we were even.
Yeah.
But I see so many kids struggling, and it's really, really sad. But yeah, so I had so many major shifts that I was like, okay, we're on to something. And I became really passionate about it. And I went back to school. So I had been doing a variety of different jobs, but I was working in an office in like a financial company, which is totally, don't ask me how that came into
Okay.
It was like a weird, really long blip. I've done some work around that, but anyway, it was so interesting because I would go to work during the day, work out of the office, and then in the evening, totally dive in and had my second life as this health coach who was, basically trying to consume as much information as possible and doing every program and going back to school and getting my master's and just getting deeper and deeper into this work. And so I got bit by that bug and I've been doing it ever since. And it's been a pretty incredible ride.
Wow. How's your mom?
My mom passed away. So
Wow.
she journeyed with breast cancer for 6 years. And, so she passed in January of 2010. So it was her 10-year anniversary, actually, of her passing this past January. And I started my company and I started the podcast because of her. Like literally, I don't think I would be doing this work in this way if I didn't have such a deep experience with my mom and her journey, and then her eventual passing. It cracked me open in so many ways that I still am understanding little by little each day. And it also opened up a deep connection to my own intuition that I feel I am forever grateful for. And it has, I've allowed it to guide me in this process of like creating what it is that I was meant to create and do, which I had prior to that. I had a lot of pain around not knowing what I wanted to do, who I was, I had no sense of direction, what I wanted to do. To pick a college major was like so painful because
which wasn't wasn't a major.
Exactly. And I was like, I think every time when I was asked as a little kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? I was like, I think I want to be something that like isn't in existence yet, or I don't have the words to describe it, and it's just so interesting because I'm like, oh, buddy, I think of my inner child, like you were connected, but you just didn't have the words, and it all unfolds perfectly and with divine timing. And so yeah, it's been a crazy ride, but I'm so grateful for all the gifts that I'm receiving through this journey.
Wow. Well, sorry to hear about your mom. And, I think what you shared too about how that loss and that grief opened up so much for you. I think that's such a side of those kinds of experiences that often isn't acknowledged in our society, or, it's all just kind of like, shoved away, pushed away, like just keep going, machine. And to hear the living engagement with that process and how it's actually helped you evolve into who you're meant to be is such a shining light.
Yeah. There's so many levels. It's like the first one, and it just reminds me of the different stages of grief too, because the process that you go through, there was a lot of anger. I was really freaking angry at everything, angry at, God, at my mom, angry at the system, the broken Western conventional medical system. And also like even at my ancestors, at my most recent ancestors, my grandparents, for not like teaching us some of the healing things that they knew, but that's because there's just so much involved, like there's this denigration of knowledge of ancestral wisdom. It's literally beaten out of us so that it doesn't get passed forward. And that's a very conscious systemic process that we see globally for thousands of years. And so I had a lot of anger around that. It just got me looking at how all of these things are interconnected, and what will it take for us to really wake up as a larger collective and support each other, nourish Mama Earth, and really get connected in with who we are, so we're not walking around like lost children, And so yeah, there was a lot there, and I could feel it's still very active within me, right?
Probably always will be. I mean, that's spiralic again. It's like, does that really go away? It just evolves.
Right. All these different layers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Wow. Wow. Well, that kind of brings us to today, what you do, and tell us a little bit about what you do now and how these different kind of aspects of earth and spirit come together in how you help people.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because I feel like everybody really, like your life is always evolving, but I feel so many people who are practitioners might also feel this, that your work changes constantly. So, what it looked like um, 10 years ago when I really started working as a health coach and nutritionist, it looks very different than today. And my personal journey, particularly with my intuition, has really guided me into like melding these seemingly disparate worlds into my work today. So I am trained formally as a health coach and a nutritionist, a functional nutritionist. So working within the scope of functional medicine, and also integratively and weaving in earth honoring traditions. So as I started to work as a nutritionist and health coach, I was trying to like find my niche or just see like what types of people I enjoyed working with, and all the while still healing myself and working on a lot of health issues that I was dealing with. And so I found Ayurveda, which is so beautiful and intuitive, and with the elements it made sense. And I started working with more plants and herbs and really looking at food as medicine and this concept of wildness and rewilding. So there was the rewilding movement. And I understood that after working with more and more people, that if you just gave people the proper nourishment on different levels, so I was also seeing how it didn't have to be food related. Something happens in someone's life and then their health issue goes away. And so if we could just bring the proper nourishment for one into one's system, essentially feeding their wild, then this innate living superorganism that is the human body can switch on and really heal itself because it's designed to do so. There's just like this incredible intelligence that we can't understand with our rational minds. So my work started to go more and more in those realms and a little bit further away from the strictly evidence-based traditional sense of nutrition. And on the personal side, I was really working on my intuition and getting into Akashic Records. So I learned to access my records, which that's a whole nother story and like how I got there. But that also swung open this entire world for me and also really amplified my own intuition. So I
Tell
was,
us what the Akashic Records are in case someone's never heard of them.
oh, sure, yeah. The Akashic Records are this vast energetic database. We can liken it to a Google or like in the iCloud, where all thought, word, deed, literally anything that has vibration is recorded and stored. So some people might call it the book of life. Akasha, through the Hindu Ayurvedic perspective, is space and ether. And so there's this sense that there's this level within the space and the ether that holds the information of all that is and all that ever was. And we can tap into that energetic database, the Akashic Records, and into our particular book and library for personal healing, for inquiry, literally for any question that you might have. And so I got into it because I was really seeking personal healing, and my just my healing with grieving with my mom's loss and just kind of coming into who I was as a woman. And what I didn't realize was how much I would learn through the Akashic Records, because if anybody has engaged in the Akashic Record work or worked with others, you can ask about anything. So it's literally like going to a library. Once you're able to really kind of tune in, which that might take some practice if you don't already have an intuitive practice that you engage with. And you can ask all the questions that you've had about the world and about how things work. And also literally being in the Akashic field and in Akashic light, just how healing that is. So many shifts and changes started happening when I began to engage with the Akashic Records. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is incredible. I'm so grateful for this in my life. They found me, they fell into my lap. Like I didn't know what they were. I wasn't seeking them. And I find that happens a lot with people too, with the Akashic Records, is that they find you. And so I then started to get a ping that I needed to bring this work into my nutrition work with clients. And we were talking about human design way back a little bit earlier. I'm a manifesting generator, and so I need to wait for invitations to like really say yes to things and to move forward, although I didn't realize this at the time. But I kept getting clients that would ask me for like soul information or for intuitive counsel. And I never said that I was an intuitive or that I worked with Akashic Records. I never promoted that. So it was just interesting who starts to show up, when you're ready to take that next step. And I would tell them, look, I don't really weave this in. This is kind of separate, but I decided, let me just try it out, because clearly I'm supposed to, and I'm just resisting. So, I started to slowly weave them in after I've been working with them personally for about a year or two. And I continue to work with them, with my clients. It's been that way ever since. And I can't imagine not weaving in an intuitive. Now it makes so much sense. It's
Right.
like, of course, duh. Isn't this how doctors always worked with patients like thousands of years ago? So.
Yeah, I know. I wish that all doctors did some intuitive, like the blend. It's not either or. Like, can we just have it all? I want it all. Is that too much?
Is that too much to ask?
Yeah.
I know. I feel like there are some really good practitioners out there that, I kept saying doctors just because I was thinking of like my mom and all the doctors she was working with, but any practitioner really that I know there are many that use intuition, and it's not that they need to even tell people, but
for sure.
I actually feel like that's the direction we're going in, which is really cool. I don't know if you've experienced that, but I feel like I'm just finding that many more. Maybe it's like all the witches are coming out of the closet. Maybe they were there all along.
Maybe. Yeah. I don't interact with doctors a lot, thankfully. I'm just going to knock on wood here. But I just likening that back to when I studied in grad school as a scientist, just paying attention to the professors and their ideas and what came up, I was like, they totally just intuited that idea of what to do next. Like, it's not all logic, and it's just that it's been invalidated, so we can't, it's not accepted in society. And that's part of the work that you and I are both doing, is to like be like, no, this is valid, and it's not all woo woo out of your ass. This is like actually just energetic reading energy. And so I think that's really cool that you incorporate that aspect into all of the other, tangible physical aspects as well, because we're not just spirit, we're not just physical, we're both. And we need that. We need both of those things to really inform our pathway into health.
1,000%. And I feel like one of my missions really is to bring back the soul to medicine. I see so many other people now doing that as well. Like it really does feel like a larger movement, which is incredible. But I feel that there's still, with this pandemic and the whole viral thing that has happened this year so far, really highlights how disconnected we still are from what we're talking about, just more on a larger scale. And I think a lot of it, there's so many roots to what we touched on earlier with like the systemic issues that we have, the denigration of peoples and like the traditions that they carried that were intuitive and working with the earth. And there's a lot of, I think, healing that needs to happen in the medical community around all of that. I mean, even looking at nutrition and like how food can be such a huge issue for people, like huge. And so there's so much healing on that level that is needed, that I feel like, honestly, if we bring in a lot of that soul medicine, so many of these physical symptoms and ailments are going to go away.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's not to discount the toxicity, the real toxicity we're experiencing and other reasons behind it. But I just see so much working with the people that I do, so much related to soul issues, emotional issues, mental issues that then get manifest as physical symptoms, So, yeah. We're trying our best, though.
Right. And I think you mentioned something way back about children today are exposed to even more toxins than ever. And this is a real problem. There's never been a time like now where we are continually exposed to tens of thousands of different chemicals every day, some of which are extremely toxic, even in small doses, and we don't know the full effects of those. What kind of role does that play in the way you coach people and help people heal? And maybe even what are some things that people can look, what are some things in people's lives that might be attributed to that, and what could they do about it? I know that's kind of really general, so if that's not something you can talk to, that's fine. But I mean, I'm curious because this is a big thing.
Huge.
Huge.
Huge. So there's so much to say about this. I think, well, with the populations that I see, there are two populations I see, because I also support a local clinic here, and they focus on cognitive decline and Alzheimer's and brain issues. So it's an older population typically. And then I see the folks that I see, which are, much more open to this like deeper soul level kind of work. And what I find is, well, first of all, with those cognitive issues, a huge reason behind that is toxicity, is inability to detox, and just like too much that your body is processing, in addition to like other things like infection and metabolic disorders. But with toxicity, that was such a huge eye-opener for me, looking at that. And so with that population in particular, there's so much around like heavy metal toxicity. This isn't tested, but I see this with clients with EMFs, electromagnetic frequencies that are non-native. So, computer and phone, and now 5G wanting to roll out and rolling out. And I feel that the generations, like the younger generations, are extremely sensitive for like more soul level reasons, but also like that makes you physically more sensitive. So you are feeling that EMF, you're getting tired if you're on the computer all day. It also really impacts the body's ability to metabolize, and like your cells and how they're operating, your mitochondria. So a lot of the things that we would say are foundational, like environment, your space, what I call your sacred ecology, your external sacred ecology. So your environment and home space, where you're spending most of your time, which for a lot of people that's at work. There's so many toxins in like the home and at work and in the air. So the air that you're breathing, the water that you're drinking, right? We could get into like the water and all of that's there. Every single day, I'm not even touching on the products that people use and put on their skin every single day, or the foods. Your body is inundated with assaults. And I have seen that with a shift in diet, like to primarily organic or local, non-GMO, and with cleanup of products, toxicity, at least like looking at real lab work, goes down significantly. So those are really basic, obvious modifications that actually do work. And, if you needed the science lab work behind it, it's there.
What kind of things do you test? Do you test like liver enzymes, or do you test the actual toxic load? Like, what do you test?
Yeah. Well, if you're seeing a functional medicine doctor, they're going to go a lot more deeply with the functional lab work, and that would include a toxicity panel. And so, depending on which lab you use, they'll look at specific toxins. And that could be guided by maybe what the practitioner suspects, that might be going on. Also, looking at organic acids is another a lab test that you could do, which is basically the metabolic output of what is going on in your body.
Oh, cool. Kind of like your cells poop.
Yeah, totally. And the cells that you're carrying. So maybe like, parasites and
oh, wow. Okay.
And all the glorious microbiome that is in and on your body. So all of those metabolites from them as well. So it gives you a pretty good sense of what might be going on in there. But if you're going to a regular doctor, then yeah, you might want to get a regular blood panel, which might include a CBC differential. That's a complete blood count. So you're looking at your immune system and your white blood cells. And you could see, is your immune system fighting, particular infection, or do you have inflammation? Liver enzymes is a really good marker to look at for sure, to see what maybe the toxic load your liver is dealing with. But I would say that symptoms, because sometimes I'll see lab work, or like I've heard so many people go to their doctor and their doctor tells them their lab work looks fine. And so they don't want to.
That's me. I'm raising my hand here.
Yeah. Yeah. And what I see in those cases is, well, there's a lot there. Number one, you're probably just more sensitive on a lot of different levels.
Yeah, for sure.
And also, sometimes there's subclinical, and your body is also compensating so that it might look a little better on the labs, but it's like doing all it can to make those.
It's numbers. Like robbing from one area to give to another.
And sometimes it expresses differently in your body. So maybe for that person, it's not going to come out in super high liver enzymes, but it might come out as something else in their lab panel. So making sure that if you want to go into lab work, you're working with a doctor, a practitioner who really understands and can look at like a really wide variety of things.
It's like reading an astrology chart. You got, it's like you can't just go in with a basic knowledge. You got to know how all of it interacts together.
1,000%. It's funny because when I work with clients, I'll weave in like my pre-health history when they give me their intake. I'll look at if they have their birth date and they want to give me their birth time. I'll look at their chart. I'll look at like things like also their human design. Just spend a little bit of time, because all of those are maps. They're pieces of the puzzle and information that can really help us understand more about how our constitution works and what's going on inside of us. So I'm a huge fan of self-study and like looking at all these different lenses and piecing the puzzles together.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Wow. So I think that's cool. I'm just, as you're speaking, I'm just getting this like awareness of somebody really needs to hear this. So whoever you are, you take heed, and maybe someone, I don't know what or why, but it's just like, I really feel like you're talking about the blood work for a reason, something there. So then what, like, gosh, what do we do? It's not like we can just go turn off all the cars on the highway and make everyone stop wearing disgustingly fake fragrant things. And, I cannot stand artificial fragrance. Oh my God. It literally makes my throat swell. It's like, those are just very simple things. We can't go stop the farmers from throwing, from growing GMO crops and then throwing all the pesticide and herbicide on them. And like, what do we do? Like, what are we to do?
Yeah, huge question. I think it's different for everybody. So checking in on, what do you have the ability to do? What do you have access to? And what is your inclination? So for one person, maybe it's more zero waste and looking at like actively in your life how you participate in the cycle, and maybe you choose to detox your home. And for another person, it could start with food and really getting a little bit more vigilant. I like to think of becoming a disciple of yourself, and really owning all the things, all the decisions that you make. Because I think it really stems from a consciousness that we have to create, right? A level of consciousness of how do we participate in it and are affected by it, because it's all connected. And so if you're looking at cleaning up your diet, how are you also participating in the groundwork that makes it possible for more toxicity to come through? So for some people, it's actually feasible to get like organic food, even though it might be more expensive, right? If you could choose with your fork, that is, the consumer has a ton of power. So if we want to see like bigger, larger global shifts and changes, those are the types of changes we need to make, the ones that like voting with our dollar, essentially, because that's the world that we're living in right now. But simultaneously, I feel like there's something that I witness with people. It's like an energetic resonance between how the kind of world that you want to live in and how are you choosing to participate in the world right now, And I think that's we have to think about that when we're thinking about our health and our body, and like even down to the nitty gritty of lab work. We have to think about becoming that person who is living in the world that we want to create. And what does that person do? What does that person want? What does that person say? And so that got really meta, but I think like kind of starting there and just looking at, it doesn't have to start with food for you, but looking at what really resonates with you right now that you feel like, I've been really wanting to change or shift this for my health, but also for like the wider health of the collective. And just start with one very simple thing, because honestly, that's how it worked with me. And it just sort of rolls in slowly, but surely into other areas of your life. And so I think starting with like those really small, simple habits that you can build upon is probably the best thing that we can do. I don't know. There's just so much about toxicity that I don't even know where to begin and end.
Right. I know. I think that's a great perspective, though, because really it's those little everyday habits that add up, and each of us, though we may feel insignificant and small, we do add up as well. And that's just that's part of where our power is, individually and collectively.
Yeah. I heard a quote from Lila June recently, and because I've been thinking about this topic of sovereignty and health sovereignty. And she said that sovereignty is not just feeding yourself or how you feed yourself, it's also being able to lead yourself. And that really hit home for me, because working with so many people, we could try to do all the things, but if we don't really lead ourselves, take that stand in leadership of our life, then we can't really step into full sovereignty. And I see that every day in my work. I see that in my own life. So I think, just sort of reflecting on that for anybody listening, if this is resonating, think about what can you step into as a leader in your life? Like what area? And that's where to start, and then everything else will start to unravel.
I love that. I love that. It's such a good point. I think people wait for that outer power to tell them what to do, but you got to find that inner power and guide and lead yourself. I love that. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think that's why what you guys do too is so incredibly important. Starting with connecting with your intuition, because that is what's going to guide you. You can try to find every doctor, practitioner, guru, blogger that has the quote answer, and it's just a mirror, it's reflection, and it really requires you to get in touch. And so that all the information that you're receiving is coming in through the filter of your intuition, so you can apply it for yourself. And that's where the healing happens. That's because all healing is self-healing. And so it requires you to be an active participant in that really deep way. It wakes up your cells and elicits that self-healing process, as well as all the other unseen factors that are going on, right, energetically. So it's so important to really connect in and create space for yourself to touch in on and connect with your intuition and your voice.
Heck yeah. That is so important. It's so huge. Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Oh, now you're going to get me going on like a soapbox over here. I'm like, oh, getting fired up. Oh, wow. Well, oh, gosh, I feel like we've only barely even skimmed the surface of what you have to share. And what's really cool is you have so much more magic and medicine to share, and people can access it through your website, through working with you, but also through your podcast. So tell us about your podcast and what you talk about on there, and also what else you offer and where people can find you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. My podcast is called Feed Your Wild. And it really is looking at all of these layers that we're speaking into. So we touch in on food as medicine and plants and intuition and spirituality. But I bring on a ton of guests who are experts or healers, helpers, scientists. I try to get a really well-rounded perspective on all of these aspects of healing, in order to feed that wild that I touched in on earlier, that wild within ourselves that knows exactly what to do and knows how to heal. So we touch in on a lot of different topics. And it's one of my favorite things to do now. I'm like in love with podcasting. It's one of the ways that I am actively healing my voice. And that's something that I'm also really interested in, and interested in just supporting people in the collective around. I think especially now, there's such a huge invitation for us to step in and really connect in with our voice and activate our voice so that we're heard, because it's time. It's time to change the damn world by allowing our voices to be heard. And so yeah, that's been something I've been diving into. I had a workshop recently on that, Feed Your Wild Voice. So we're looking at all the energetic aspects, like energetic anatomy behind that, but also the very real, tangible things that we could do to support the throat chakra. But workshops like that. So I also have another one, Feed Your Wild Gut. We're looking at these different centers. So weaving in the lenses of this, evidence-based science, body physiology, nutrition, with also the soul level and intuitive pieces that are fundamental and we cannot do without. So that's a lot of what I've been working on a larger scale. I also work with people one-on-one, sort of in that same capacity. So with Akashic Records, I do readings for folks, soul level intuitive readings. And I also weave in monthly Akashic readings on the podcast. That's become one of my favorites. And so it's kind of like the theme of the month. And also soul nutrition sessions. So that combines and weaves in the functional nutrition, the body piece, along with the intuitive and Akashic records for clients. Yeah.
Wow, that's so cool. And we will link to your website and podcast and Instagram and all that good stuff in the show notes. And just tell people where that website is that they can go to find all of that.
Yeah, it's at wildlyrooted.com. And I also have a totally free program. It's like a legit full 6-module audio program if people are interested, called Wildly Unstuck. And
Cool.
that is sort of just a foundational come in and look at these areas where you feel stuck and what are some of the first steps that you could take to really begin your journey of self-healing. So you can find that at wildlyrooted.com/unstuck.
Beautiful. Go check it out, everybody. And wow. How would you feel about doing a secret episode about the Akashic Records?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, cool. Well, thank you so much for being our guest and sharing. And I really hope that this helped our listeners. I know it helped our listeners get some perspective on their physical body, because that's a really important part of being human. So thank you for sharing your story and what you do.
Yeah, thank you for this opportunity. I just want to say that I know it could feel really frustrating, especially if you've been dealing with health challenges chronically and it seems like you can never get to the root. And all I have to say is stick with it. Keep going, because there are so many layers to healing, and as so many listeners know, this is a spiralic journey. This is not linear in any way. I think we're getting far away from linear these days. But so whoever needs to hear this, if you're feeling like giving up, I promise you it's worth it to keep going, keep talking to people, keep searching and researching, and find allies to really help support you, because you cannot do this alone. And I see that's a big reason why people want to quit or literally can't take it anymore. And it's because they're usually trying to deal with it alone. So please, please, please reach out for support or your community, or get connected in with this like beautiful community that you have, Natalie, because it's so healing. And yeah, it could take you a far way.
Beautiful words of encouragement. I needed to hear those, because I struggle with my health journey as well. So I've come a long way, but it's spiralic, as you say, and it just keeps unfolding. So thanks for that beautiful message. Mm-hmm. Hey, well, everybody go check out Venessa's podcast and go spiral into her world and have fun. All right. Well, thanks again. Thank you so much, Venessa.
Yeah. Thank you, Natalie. It was awesome.
All the roads are windy.
Listen to over 200 free EarthSpeak podcast episodes on your favorite podcast app, and visit earthspeak.love to learn about our collective community and workshops.